I will say I called this, I think, and I'm trying to model for the future that any CWR member can like call a flash combo anytime. Uh, so just keep that in mind. um, but it seemed like there's a lot of energy about wanting to talk about print magazines. I know it's been on the mind of my congregation. Sounds like a lot of people are having the same questions. So I thought I would love to just kind of gather people and hear what pros and cons you're weighing, or if anyone has wisdom to share. So,
Well, I didn't share this on the listserv just because, I mean, I know a lot of people were throwing out there, what they were doing. But yeah, in 2025, we did do like three. Well, it used to be magazines like with a theme and like 32 pages, very long thing. And yeah, in like the last 5 years, we've condensed it to more of like a newspaper style where it's, between 12 and more like 16 pages and full color. And yeah, we went down to like 3 issues a year. And now in 2025, we're going to go down to 2 issues a year just because it's not the best return on investment, but it's still a great way to stay in contact with donors and let them know kind of the news of the day, especially the ones that don't go online or, aren't watching our social media or don't open our e-newsletter, for whatever reason. So we do feel like we need to keep it. But just, yeah, cutting back on it because it does take a lot of time and energy and resources. And sometimes if the financial, if we're not like bringing in what we're putting into it, you start to wonder, is it worth it? Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're in a position where we don't have to fundraise. We still have an envelope in it though, because I made the point there's several things to that. That one, people still want to give to the sisters. There's just some people who will always give, and that money always we're very generous with giving it to worthy organizations. And two, the ramifications for other religious communities. If we come out and say we don't need money, it may affect, another group that's also in our state where people think, well, the sisters don't need money. So that's a position I've kind of had to take to maintain that we still need the envelope. But we're actually going to send out a postcard in January that I still have to put together to ask people if they still want to continue receiving the print dome or if they'd like to receive it digitally. That seems to be a consensus that we want to find that out. So I'll be curious to see. I think the majority of the people will still want the print, just given the ages of our donors and friends and alumni.
Rob,
Rob.
I don't,
Hey, hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm in a different setup here. It's not working super great, but anyway, I want to echo what Tricia said. So we're a smaller magazine, like 12 to 16 pages. We do feel like we want to hang on to it for a while, at least 5 more years probably, because there is a core audience that's how they get our content. That's how they get our messages. So I know it's an expense. The reason I hopped onto this was I think, going the opposite direction that a lot of people seem to be doing. I'm publishing really about once a year, and that's more of a bandwidth problem for me. Our intention is to be quarterly. We want to have it out there frequently. So that's our goal, is to have that just in front of people more often. And it's just a contact point to connect with the congregation. So that's what we're looking at.
Well, I can't raise my hand. I've been trying. Um, and
Well, hey, Joanne, before there is an important point. One thing that I want to add is our magazine, our newsletter isn't as big as what a lot of people are doing. So it's not as, I know that can be a real pain point if you're talking about, 5 figures in circulation, and we're not that size. We're like lower 4 figures. So it's not that big of a financial hit. I'd probably feel differently if we were sending out like 30,000 newsletters, because that is an expense to send that out frequently. But at our scale, I think it makes sense. Sorry.
That's okay. No, we've gone from over almost 30 years from once a month newspaper thing to a newsletter to then a magazine that went 5 times a year. And then the advancement office started doing their own magazine. And so about 10 years ago, if you people get the more, we we brought that back just into the communications office, although we work closely with the advancement office to doing it. We've gone from 4 to 3 to now 2, and then this year and it's 24 pages, and it was when it's gone goes to about 10,000 people, I think. 10,000, is that right? Cats on there. And it's it's and we also put it on our website so people can read it electronically. And we have an update that goes to about 700, almost 800 people every month. So that's another way we've been trying to promote all the different forms, social media, different forms and website. But when I went to uh, Transforming Grace, I went via not Albany, via Erie. And when I was wandering through the mother house there, I saw this thing that Stephanie Hall was doing about a little more. And she brought some copies of it. Maybe you saw it at Transforming Grace, some of you. And I said to her, "Can I steal your idea?" And oh, sure, of course. So we now have what we're doing twice a year. We call it A Little More. This is the first publication. You can see it for real on our website because we've got it as a flip book there. And it's a threefold kind of thing, but it's not like a brochure. It's just a different form. And she called her magazine is Journeys, and she called it Petite Journeys. So we totally stole her idea. And we've been, with her permission, of course. And I think it's been successful because our advancement coordinator told me how many envelopes. It does have an envelope in it, and it goes without any kind of packaging. We've got little tabs on it so the envelope doesn't fall out. And we've started doing a donor impact report, and we can look at this next year, but they kept changing their time on that, the advancement office, so that the two went out pretty close to each other, maybe 3 weeks apart. So I think for next year we need to look at it going out. But somebody wrote in the list of things that came, which is very much like we're doing, and Kat could talk more about that, is that we're doing short articles with QR codes all over the place, or if it's an electronic thing, read more or learn more or click here or whatever, so that they can go to longer articles if they want. And I've had so many people tell me that this was great. I really sat down and read it. I just usually look at the pictures and then say I'll go back to it, and then I never do. So thank you to Stephanie, even though she's not here. I told her I'd let her people know we used her idea. So
We publish one annual magazine for our congregation, and then the provinces have additional publications. But there's every year it seems like we're like, should we do this congregational publication? It's always on the chopping block. And I think it comes down to that question of like, do the donations that come in fund the magazine? But we've also been clear that the magazine is not a fundraising piece itself. So it's like, how do you balance, the purpose of the magazine is to be a touch, to tell stories, to connect with people. So it's like there's benefits you can't measure really easily. And it seems like the solution everyone always jumps to for magazines is, well, let's just make it digital and make it some beautiful PDF. And I don't know, like even I'm in my 40s, I'm very online. And if someone sent me a PDF to a magazine, I might open it, I might flip through it, and then it's gone. Like, but if you mail me a magazine, I'm going to put it on my coffee table and like have the intent to read it eventually. And it's going to hang out there and like be in front of me for a while, I think. So I really see benefits to a magazine. Like I think there really is a place for print still. It's just like, how do you make that case?
Well, Kim, adding to that, like our population is a lot older, the sisters and even our donors are older. They still like the hard copy. And I think that's the reason we still, I mean, we will put it up online, but we still send out hard copies and we try to do that twice a year.
So we work with our development office, or it's now called our philanthropy office, on it. And in the last 20 years, I'd say, like, we used to mail to like between 15 and 10,000 donors. But then our philanthropy office started looking more at the numbers. And so today, here we are in 2024, we send roughly 4,000 magazines, and we still get the same amount, like the return on it is the same as it was, when we were sending to like 10 and 15,000 people. And basically what they're using now is more of a guide, like instead of sending it to like everybody who's ever given a donation or everybody who's given a donation in like the last 10 or 15 years, now they really hone down and say, okay, this will be sent to anybody who's given in the last 3 to 5 years. And yeah, like I said, it saved us tons of money and postage. Just having a more targeted group to send to instead of just like sending to everybody. Because some people in those donor databases are just people who might have known like one sister and gave like an honor memorial, and then they're in our database, like they're never going to give to us ever again. So that would be like if you're looking to cut down a group to kind of phase out, if you're looking to cut back on numbers that you send your magazine to.
And Tricia, that's so interesting too, because we have a new director. Colleen Kelly's now our new director and was just talking about that same thing, where originally our magazine wasn't like based on donations, but with the cost of mailing and everything, like we're rethinking that maybe we just send it out to the people who've donated in the last 2 or 3 years. That's interesting you said that.
You're on mute, Kathy.
Sorry. I had done a listserv query a few months ago because we were discussing all of that, because we have like about 10,000 people receiving it, and we're a very small community now. And we're kind of struggling with who do you cut out, because we have alumni and we have relatives of sisters in there, and yeah, do you go back 5 years, 6 years, and if that person hasn't made a donation, do you cut them off? So that's something that we're struggling with as well. And like Kim, I feel like the Dome is one of our magazines called the Dome, and I always feel like it's one of those things that's kind of a target. Like, the person in charge of finances is kind of been focused on, why are we doing this? And I feel like I'm making the case for print to an older group of women who should know, that print still has value. And like all of you probably do, we put it on the website. But you're right, there's something about a print piece, and some of these people that receive it, that's our only touch point with them. So we're just kind of wrestling with all this ourselves.
Kat, I think we're just going really back. Well, we can't hear you though.
Is this better? No.
Well, we can hear you, but you're like muffled.
Yeah, turn up the volume on your computer.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, but we can't see you.
We can hear you.
Okay. If you can hear me, fantastic. I just wanted to bring up two things, 2 points. Recently, we've been like trying to figure out how to display our print pieces digitally. I know that we've been talking about how it can be, generally speaking, less impactful, but I reached out to the Catholic Pilot, and they work with flow paper. And the crazy thing about that is that it's a one-time payment of like $80, and then you can just display whatever print material, like just upload your PDF and boom, done. So I would highly recommend that to everyone. Can you guys hear me?
What was the name of the company?
Flow paper, flow paper.
Can you put that in the chat?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that in a sec.
And what does it actually do?
It's just a way of having a flip book, a digital flip book online. And we found it to be a very cost-effective way of taking stuff that we've already printed out and then translating that to our website. Yeah, so, and then also, I just wanted to mention that at the CWR conference this past year, one really impactful thing that I took away with me was how print material isn't only just a relationship between you and the people who receive it. It's a relationship that lasts considerably longer, especially like when we're talking about magazines, because they live in people's coffee tables, their bathrooms, and like so it seems like it might seem counterintuitive, but one of the most wise decisions you can do is to design a cover that people want to look at, and B, really invest in the materiality. Because if it's heavy, if it has some heft, people are actually hesitant to throw it away. So anyway, that's the case that I make as the graphic designer who always wants to have pretty things and create pretty things. That's the case that I try to make. Anyway, those are my 2 cents.
I don't know who is next, but do you mind if I go? Because I want to follow up on what she just said, because I've been thinking about this conversation. My situation's much the same as many have reported. That, we've had a magazine, we do it twice a year. The primary audience is our donors. We don't necessarily do it to fundraise. We include an envelope. It returns about $4,000, something like that. Our digital newsletter that we follow up with our donors that we do monthly far exceeds the donations. But what I'm wondering is the person who posed this question is thinking about starting one. And I keep answering the question framing of like how we're hanging on to ours and why. But I really wonder if I step back and said, if I were, would I start one? And that's where Catherine's comments about, the heavier paper, the experience behind it to make it relevant today. And even if you think of other magazines, remember like the weekly magazines, I'm going to go pop culture here, like US Weekly and People, they're not like that anymore. Now they're like $13.95 an issue, and they're about a topic, and they're kind of an experience. They're not like something you flip through, because people get that now online, but they rebranded themselves as an experience. So I think if I think about that person's question about starting one, it wouldn't look like what I produce twice a year.
Our magazine is very much the smallest definition of magazine that you could offer. It is a full 8 pages total, so 2 4-page prints. And we really use it, like you said, it's a touch point. One of the things that we did similarly to someone else who said they purged their mailing list was our development, Trisha, your development office, your philanthropy office purged. So I supervised development, so we did a big purge a few years ago where we went through the list and said, we looked at it with our congregational secretary, because there were people in this list who'd never donated before. And our development office, we would have purged them immediately. But we sat down with the sister and literally she went through a spreadsheet name by name by name to recognize this person has a longstanding relationship with the congregation and wants to receive the newsletter regardless of donation. This person is this sister's brother's nephew's niece, whatever. And all these little nuanced relationships that we would never have known. And then the other thing we did before we did our final purge was in the second to last issue, we mentioned that we were going to be reducing our mailing list. And then in the last issue before we purged the mailing list, we included a postcard that said, please keep me on the list. I appreciate getting your news your news break, your news, whatever. And we got a lot of postcards back from people who had never donated before because they appreciate the opportunity to hear what the sisters are doing. And we had a lot of really nice letters back with the people who send, again, it's not a development piece. It just tries to pay for itself kind of magazine and magazine. Almost all the comments are like, I loved reading the story about this sister. Like they don't care about the annual report. They just want to have touch points with the sister who they had as a teacher in first grade, so for us, that big purge, and we do print it on moderately heavy paper. But I think the other nice part is that I can always find enough content. I'm never pulling teeth to fill 8 pages. I mean, when you consider that the front page is a cover, so that's page 1, and the back page has the mailing address and a little tiny article, I'm literally filling very limited amount of space. So it's always just prioritizing, and then all the rest of our news goes up on our site. And then we do have folks who then can, even if we get purged, we have a sign-up sheet on our website so they can subscribe and they can ask for print or print and email or email only, and then they can do whatever they want. So, and I'm going to turn my video off just because I'm still eating my lunch.
Jump in with a quick follow-up. Did you pay for the reply postage on those postcards, or did people do it themselves?
Let me look. I'll put it in the chat. I can't remember.
That's a good
It
question.
was 5 years ago.
So we publish our magazine twice a year. It used to be 4, and then it went down to 3, and one of those 3 included the annual giving report. And we've now pulled the annual giving report as a separate. We're trying to kind of distinguish between the two. We're just testing different things, to be honest. We still include stories. We still include information about sisters that have passed, Jubilee, things like that. Um, I'm really glad to hear some of these conversations because we purged our list also last year after the development office changed their database. And we went from mailing about 12,000 copies. In the last 4 years, we went from 12 to 10 down to 6. And I'm going to have to follow up with them to see how the incoming donations have changed or shifted with that. That would be an interesting thing. I don't actually think that they've changed a lot because what they purged was a lot of those just they've been on there forever. And I was getting a lot of emails about people. My mom died 2 years ago and we're still getting your magazine kind of a thing. But where I'm at too is I'm really curious about also growing the list. And because I also think that there's a place and time for print, and this is a good one. But like most of you, I think that our fundraising efforts are going to continue to shift. And as our donor populations get smaller from attrition and deaths, I think too we have to do something to keep it going. And I think that there's still a place for this. So I am looking at, for example, we're on campus with St. Mary's College, and we still have a Friends with Sisters program in which students come over and, spend time with sisters. But we don't have a mechanism in place that says if you have these relationships with sisters, let's keep them. It might be tucked away on the website, but I want to trying to build the avenues between some of these types of programs so that these audiences aren't lost to us, that we go through the easier channels now of building relationships with alumni in these situations, so that they too can keep getting the sister stories and things like that. So I'm just really trying to think about creatively, like where would I want this to go? And I imagine that the page counts will continue to decline. I mean, our largest ever usually used to be 32 when they were combined, but we pretty much stay around 24 now. So I think even 8 and 16, all those numbers are great. It's more about the experience and people having things and those touch points, as we all know. So that's kind of where we're at.
H. Sampson, I think you're up. Sorry, I don't know your first name.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of Trudy Hamilton and the School Sisters, Notre Dame. I had a couple questions. I do the newsletter for the School Sisters. So it's normally twice a year we publish, and it's normally around 11 to 12,000 people that we send out to. And it's a 12-page newsletter. So one of my questions was, when you guys are talking about sending out your newsletters and using a heavier weight, are you folding your newsletter then, or are you sending that as a flat to all of your people on your subscriber list?
I can make a poll.
Well, ours is a magazine, so it's actually saddle stitched, and I think that's what Catherine was talking about. I think she was talking about what you said, Catherine.
Yeah, we went through that question about folding it years ago, and it was, the whole look and feel of it wasn't as nice as Cat. You weren't here, Cat, at the time, but it wasn't as nice as Cat would want it. It wasn't as classy looking, and we just abandoned that idea before we even used it. We looked at a few others. So,
My hand is up next, so I'll answer for us too. Ours is a glossy magazine as well. We send it, the printer who prints it does all the folding, and ours is stapled. So that's what ours looks like. And I went to grab, so we have 2 a year at the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago. The one with our annual report in it is 36 pages. And the one that we just printed that doesn't have our annual report is 20 pages. And I wanted to talk about how somebody else, Rob, you mentioned going to more photos. And someone else was talking about like having the capacity to do the content. So what I've done, because I don't think there's a lot of overlap between our social media and email newsletter audience and our print audience. So a lot of my images are, and they love this, I did a collage. So our covers are collages now, and all of these photos I repurposed from social media posts because the audiences are different. So I've been using a lot of the imagery from that I'd already posted on social media, so that when the people get the print magazine, they're getting a lot of the same content, but in this different format. Oh, and our mailing list, we also called recently. We went from 11,000 to now we're at 7,500.
I just forgot that in addition to the postcard that was in the thing, we also sent out a postcard, the in next issue, that went just to the people who didn't get Reflections and Connect, or didn't get the newsletter. And so they got a postcard that had, instead of receiving the print publication, and then we did pay for postage. So they just got that, and then they could hop back onto the list. So
That's really nice, Dusty. How many people, like, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, how many people received it and how many people responded?
I mean, we purged over 8,000 people, so we would have sent out over 8,000.
Okay.
When we sent it out.
Dusty, did you purge the ones that didn't respond, or you purged ones that responded? Because we're getting ready to send that postcard out, and I'm just curious about that.
We went through, we created the purge list. They did not get the next newsletter. They got a postcard instead, and then they had to send back the postcard to opt in and get off that purge list. And so then if they wanted it, if they came back, like we sent the postcard and hit delete. And then if they wanted back on, we put them back on, or hit archive or whatever. Like we took them off the list until we got the postcard back and then added them back in.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things probably wasn't clear about on this little more is that we're going to be sending it twice a year with the magazine going out in the middle of the year. And I just sent the storyboard kind of overview to all the people that have contributed. I've been working with them all week or for 2 or 3 weeks on getting articles in that would be more substantive than what we put in the more update that comes out every month. And the other thing about growing the list, Rob is echoing in my ears as he does so often with different things. Are you still on here, Rob? Sure, he went away before I could talk about him. And I think it was at the conference that he said, it's all about, reaching out to younger people. If you're not doing that, then we may as well go out of business. And one of the things, one of our sisters is works at Boston College, and she's constantly bringing people, the students over here for pizza and prayer and pizza and this, that, and the other thing, and inviting in the sisters so they can meet sisters. So many of them have never met sisters. So I said to her, how many copies would you want of this little more, which I held up before? And I was thinking she might want 50, 40, something. Is 100 okay? I'm like, yes. And so she took 100, and I know she's not going to just leave them on a table somewhere. And one of her students was mentioned in it too, and we did a longer article on him. That she has a whole group of students that are coming out of prison and or incarceration of some shape, form, or description. And that article was in there. Guy and Kat did the interview with both of them. So we are trying to reach out to a younger demographic that way. And we do have a college and a high school, but they haven't asked for additional copies. And I don't want to impose them on them and have them just sit there and end up in the trash. So, but I do know that they're going out to those students at Boston College.
I wanted to raise a question, which was just about content that you all put in your magazines. Like ours is always really focused on stories about, it might be on a topic, but how are sisters doing work about X justice topic or whatever ministry. And I know in the next year, one of my goals is to do more spiritual content and more reflections. I wondered if you've had, more like in-depth reflections types of things in your magazines. Have things like that worked well, or is there content that really has seemed to resonate with people?
Well, I can share that we've also tried to put more spiritual things in ours, but we've also tried to do that digitally, not just in the magazine. And we try to bring up topics of Catholic social teaching and gospel messages, and we've tried to really frame it around the why and the part of our charism and identity of why these things are important. So anytime we're even just telling a sister is doing XYZ or this project is happening here, we're really always, I'm sure we all are, tying it back to something. Ironically, some of our most popular articles have been like sister advice, and I use that term it really broadly. Things like we had a sister who gave advice because she's a therapist. She gave advice on good communication tips when you're stressed, or how to deal with stress. We had one that was tips for caregivers, those that are helping with aged family members and so forth. And so it's the sister giving advice and prayer resources to go along with it. And those were phenomenal. And those were the ones that I would get the most letters about too. Like, I can't tell you how much this article helped me because I'm dealing with X. So I would I would say that. And I'll go ahead with my question too, since no one answered, and then people can go back and answer Kim's. But so maybe you could tag this onto your replies, but we also have been using QR codes and really trying to also give a different experience online. So we're trying to one, work on our SEO. If we put articles online, so we might rewrite it slightly or repackage it. And then the second thing we're doing is like in our last magazine, we did a questions and answer. We did a thing that was called a questions and answer interview, but it was called Sitting with a Sister or Sitting with Sisters. And so far it's been good. In the sense that it was an article with some specific questions, and then you could go watch more in-depth portions of the interview in a video format online. So our goal is to try to build new things that are happening for vocation, but we also know that just a lot of people are interested. And so we've done less to push this stuff out, actually, but so far the response has been positive. But so we're trying to have different packaging of things when we go online. Well, that's helpful.
I think why I originally raised my hand was to answer your other question, Donna, about like keeping those connections with alumni. And I think those, and that also answers your question, Kim. Our most popular articles are either stories about alumni or sisters talking about stories about alumni. So our most popular article over the last year, both in our printed magazine and online, was one of our sisters did a talk at Benedictine College last summer in 2023. And they put it in their magazine. And then we put it in our magazine and on our website. And it's by far the most popular because she interviewed a whole bunch of alumni and put in their quotes to talk about the Benedictine rule and living it out in the world. And that has been by far our most popular thing recently. So we've been also thinking, I love the Sitting with Sisters idea because I think anytime people are in conversation with the sisters, that really brings their mission and charisma to life. And I think that's what people really resonate with. I've also been thinking our Sisters and Oblates have a book group. And I've been trying to get somebody from that group to write like just a paragraph about what they're reading, but I'd love to have some of their thoughts on the books that they're reading and put those in our printed magazine. I think that would be great. So yeah, more of those creative things. I was also thinking after the conference, I was talking with what Julie, I have her business card sitting right in front of me, Julie McElmurray, who does videos, documentary videos of with women religious. And she and I were bouncing ideas back and forth about kind of how to put sisters' stories on video and then have a I was just thinking in this conversation, I was like, oh, we could have a little article in the printed with a QR code that would go to a video on our website. So thinking of those like more multimedia approaches.
We also did a art essay writing contest with students. And I'll put a link of the winners, but it's been great as far as like it was our magazine cover. It was, 4 pages in the last magazine. It's been numerous social posts. So that was something that came from our justice group office had an idea for this, and so we collaborated with them, and that was really fun.
One of the things, and we've been asked by our leadership, we were asked at one point to do was when you talk about spirituality, yes, we do delve into spirituality and related to different issues. Like one of the big ones right now, the last issue was land justice. Another spirituality one is called the grace of listening, and it's all about synodal listening. But the other thing is to do, and I just a reflection that has just one question or that is because so often I don't know about you, but it's so text heavy because everybody who contributes can't say it in 400 words, and they feel like you're being mean and cruel and horrible to try to expect that of them. And so, it's not, I don't get a very good reputation because of that. So this was one that went out, I can't know if you can see it, but our 150th was, unifying love flares. And so it was just the big logo. Kat did this, a rendition of the logo for the 150th, and then just a three or four, a series of questions that people could sit with it and reflect. And so it was sort of a trying to mitigate the text heaviness of the whole thing and draw people into reflecting on our charism and mission in a way they might not otherwise do.
Kim, I'll respond to your question. We don't normally have a theme for our issues. They are basically whatever's been new since the last edition, and we send it out quarterly. So there's usually there's like 4 total things that fit in 8 pages. So we usually have at least 4 things that we can write about. And the Jubilee issue always features jubilarians on 2 of the 8 pages. So I'm pretty well covered. But last issue, we actually focused on, we did a theme kind of, and it was about grief and life's transition. So we had sisters who are grief counselors and sisters who started hospice locally, and then sisters who, we had another one who's who started 2 hospices throughout the country. So we had reflections about that were written by the sisters, potentially from the archives, which is sometimes a much more vibrant story than if you ask a sister today about something she did 25 years ago. So one of them was literally her taking her written reflection paper that she submitted to the archives and modifying it, having permission to share it. And then I didn't have to write anything. It was from her mouth. She didn't have to do anything and try to have enough energy to interview with me. And people loved that article, especially because she's failing now, like cognitively. So there's no way I would have been able to get an article from her. And then another one of them was written directly by the sister. So I edited only for grammar, and it sounds like her, it's written by her, but otherwise I usually just don't write them. But the grief one was really well received. We had a lot of great feedback on it.
Dusty, did you say you have an appeal envelope in yours?
We do, unless we have one mailing list that doesn't get envelopes, which is for like our sisters and internal audiences. They don't get an envelope. And then external audiences just have one. It's just a small one, but we don't have an outright ask. It pays for itself, and that's all we look for.
And so can I ask that question? Because we have both a envelope in the center spread as well as a tear out sheet, which is no longer perforated because it was ridiculous amounts of money. And they tear just fine. But our development office has this front back tear out sheet. And so sometimes it's about, did you know the importance of monthly giving, or did you know that you could give bequests in your, like, so it's more like development related content. And you could order cards for memorials or for Father's Day or for whatever. So does anybody else do things like that, or do you just kind of have the envelope low key?
We just do the envelope low key.
I've been asked not to do hard asks in the newsletter.
Yeah.
We just have the envelope. Oop, I turned off my video. We just have the envelope, but we also, our development person a couple years ago made this beautiful page that's called More for Mission. I'm gonna find it and I'll put a link in the chat, but it's like, here are ways to give and support us in our mission, other ways to partner with us in mission. And it's just a 1-pager, and it usually ends up where the envelope is, but sometimes it doesn't. It's not in this one. But it's like, pray for us, become a donor, donor advised fund, sort of like all the different things you can do. But I'll put it in the chat because I think it's a really nice way of like being subtle. Here are the things you can do, but it's not directly tied to the envelope.
Oh, one thing we did add to our envelope, we're a part of that RAC Women's Religious Archives collaborative. I'm sure some of you all have heard of that. So we put them down as one of our, items people could contribute to. And we've gotten a few donations that way for RAC.
We do have a whole card program, and it brings in, little $5 donations over and over, but we have a QR code. We might put one picture and then one picture of a card. We used to have a whole page, but then we discovered the QR code several years back. And so now it links to the QR code, which is on our website. I mean, the QR links to our website.
So if I could try to summarize some of what we've heard today, and then you could see if you agree or would add anything else. It seems like obviously the people who are coming to a call about magazines probably are inclined to publish a magazine, but everyone is pretty pro print, that there's a place for print. But it sounds like a lot of people are doing maybe fewer issues a year or smaller issues. But also I'm really interested in this idea of like making the magazine a piece you want to hold on to a little longer by making sure it has a beautiful cover and maybe nicer paper, things like that. And just thinking about ways to make sure our lists are targeted, but allowing people ways to maybe give feedback and stay on a list would be helpful. I guess I'm curious, question for me is like if anyone has any other ways of collecting sort of analytics about how well your magazine is doing, since it's much harder with a print piece than the internet. What else would you add as a takeaway?
I would just say how important a call like this is. I have spent many years looking at the ideas that are in all your newsletters or many of your newsletters, or going to your website and getting ideas from other people. So I think that the energy that produces is what CWR is all about, but it's just a good thing.
One thing we started, I've tried to start doing for the last 2 years is all of our articles end with a link or QR code that is a call to action, not to a donation, but to I didn't do so great with it in the last issue. I was dealing with this stuff with CWR. I don't know where my time went, but like if it's an article about an associate, here's information about how to learn more about becoming an associate. If here's an article about some topic of Catholic social teaching, here's a link to learn more about how you can be involved in that. So not just here's a nice fluffy story, but also here's how you can be the next topic of that fluffy story.
Yeah, us too. Again, QR codes, links, our envelopes always have a code on them so we know what magazine they came from. But the development office tells me that sometimes they're getting an envelope from 1995. So there's your promise of magazines staying around. And I remember years ago, I remember hearing a quote uh, about different types of media. And it's like, they had different ones of like ads do this and catalogs do this, and magazines are for dreamers. They have one of the most high impact staying powers because it is that coffee table effect, right? It's the one you save for a recipe. It's the one you save for an article. And in our case, I think you save them for prayers. That's another thing I try to do is make these one page kind of tear out prayers that are like, if you can imagine, I try to make them like a calendar page, like a really pretty photo with a small prayer, something that someone would tear out and put on their refrigerator, just something to look forward to in the magazine. So if you have space or you want to fill space, there's another idea. Because again, you never know what's going to catch someone's eye. So oh, and
Yeah, I
bit.ly
guess I
link.
just add the things that I put in the chat. Like, I remember a talk a while back from Heather Mansfield that says people love numbered lists, like they're really drawn to them. Like, 10 best practices or 5 top whatever type of a thing, like play that little numbers game. And then like back to what Rob said, really try to think about, turning things into infographics, fun graphics, things people can read at a glance really quickly, because I do think in this work with Catholic sisters, we do get bogged down with a lot of text. And I know every single word is important, but at the same time, it's like these do have to be quick reads, quick anecdotes, because yeah, people aren't sitting a long time reading in-depth stories anymore.
I will say with 8 pages, don't do that, because we've actually received pushback on putting graphics in because people want each page to have something to read in it. For a bigger one, like I love reading yours, Trisha. I think they're great, but if I had that many pages, I would do more infographics. But I did some infographics, and we were like, I got feedback like, I missed getting to read about the sisters, and like so. Highly recommend 8 pages.
This has been awesome, Kim. I'm glad you pulled us together so quickly. I'm sure we could have these every quarter.
Yeah,
Kim's great because she's modeling CWR's New Hope. Is like, if you want a flash conversation, just make one. There's no gatekeeping. If you want to do something like this, do what Kim did. This was fabulous. Thanks for being our guinea pig, Kim.
You're welcome. This has been really great. I appreciate all of you contributing. It's a lot of wisdom in CWR. And I just want to say, I'm going to sit with that question from Jane that, if I was to start the magazine from scratch, why? What makes it worthwhile? I think that's a really clarifying question. So thank you. All right. Well, happy holidays, but hope to see you Thursday is our next Tuesday. When is the next CWR Flash Conversation, Dusty? Do you remember?
The 17th.
Okay. Tuesday the 17th.
Whatever day of the week that is, it's the 17th.
Yes.
Tuesday.
Same time, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, and I will say, if you got don't use the link from the original email. The Zoom link has changed, so it'll come out again on the 17th. But in case you hear about people sitting in a dead Zoom room, it's because that link is not working anymore.
All right.
Thanks so much, Kim.
Have a great weekend.